Then the last 10 years I have been busy on global environment. So there are new kinds of friends. One friend is Paul Crutzen, Nobel laureate. He's a very close friend. I have been advisor to his laboratories for several years. Although he has retired as the director of the Max Planck Institute, and he's connected with it, and also he is now, for part of the year, he is a professor in University of California at San Diego. So he is involved with many of the global change activities, including the controversial program, the Atmospheric Brown Cloud, ABC. My interest is, COSES is one, the climate and weather in Sun Earth system, because you are going back into it from a totally different point of view. Then the Gagan program. Gagan is where if you can find the position of the aircraft accurately within a few meters or a few, say 2, 3, 5 meters, then the landing and takeoff can be many more within a certain time period. You can handle much more aircrafts. And also safety reason, the delay and the disruptions will be less. So that program is based entirely on the American GPS system, the Global Positioning Satellite System. There are new aspects we are going into in global change. One is the megacities. In another 10 years or 20 years, all megacities will be in developing countries. They will not be in the developed countries. New York or Los Angeles, population is decreasing, everything else is increasing. Now, is it social scientists are questioning, is it a disaster or is it a good thing? Is it an eco-device or is it eco-disaster? Now, you see Bangalore will be eco-disaster. This one, 7 cities were started internationally. I was responsible for 3, Delhi, Calcutta and Manila. And a Japanese professor, Professor Imura, was responsible for Beijing, Tokyo, Shanghai and Seoul. Take Delhi. Delhi, it was a government one then, and then it became a marketing place, then an industrial place. Then it can be post-industrial, then the entire energy scenario, emission scenario will change. Metro Manila itself is 1/3 of the total emission of the country. So if you can handle Metro Manila, you have handled the whole country. So this is one interest that we have. What are the interacting systems? If I change one, if I change the forest, what happens to climate? What happens to atmosphere? What happens to ocean? Like this everywhere. What are these interacting non-linear relationship? It's not linear. Then we take up 1 or 2 major programs. At one time during Star War days, they were thinking about altering the ionosphere, which is easier to alter. Easier to alter because the number of ions are small. You alter, the basic principle in global change is the same. You are really not altering the main atmosphere. Nitrogen and oxygen you are not changing. You are changing only those parameters which are there in small traces. Chlorofluorocarbon or atomic oxygen or nitric oxide, chlorine oxide. These are in small parts per million, parts per billion, parts per trillion. Only this. So the atmosphere there, neutral atmosphere, will be very difficult to change. What was ionospheric chemistry came as atmospheric chemistry, planetary chemistry, and now global environmental chemistry and climate change. What started as a component of communication prediction to look at the sun for communication purposes has now re-emerged as a new activity called COSES, Climate and Weather in Sun Earth System. The idea behind it is the changes that you see in the atmosphere. Some of them are periodic, some are irreversible in looks, some are man-made, some are natural. Is looking at this program, the effect of the sun on the atmosphere system. And it has gone back to the upper atmosphere again. The new field called space weather. So that is, you are going again above 300 kilometer, 1,000 kilometer, few thousand kilometer. And that region is important for a number of reasons. One is satellite itself. the global change, one activity is what is it going to do to agriculture. Another activity is what is it going to do to health. Third activity is what it is going to do with water resources. We have a program now that is for entire South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka together, not Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan and India, on what climate change would do for water availability in future. Is it going to change it? Is it going to make it the region which is dry now, is it going to make it drier? We have two sets of stations we called sub-hydrological units. One is a dry region. In Pakistan there are two. In India we have Sabarmati River Basin. On the eastern side we have flood region. India is Mahanadi Shumanarekha region. Meghna Brahmaputra area is Bangladesh, and Bagmati River in Nepal. So that work for 3 years we have been working on, it's coming to an end. You see, the energy increase, total energy will produce a certain amount of emission. Now, there are two ways of handling that. Countries like us, like India, will have to increase the energy consumption, but you can increase its efficiency also. There is a loss of so much of energy, and we use our systems of production of power is often very old and antiquated. You can use a better energy. If you do that, then even though you are increasing your energy consumption and your population is increasing, even then you can bring it down. The per capita increase can be brought down, but nevertheless it will increase because the rate is very low. So you go on increasing this system until you reach a certain amount of GDP per capita. So you are then comparable in your economic strength with the others. Then your efficiency of energy, new energy systems will also come up, and so conservation of energy will also come up there. So that the question then is, where does the convergence take place? 50 years later, 100 years later, 25 years later? So that will depend on your GDP growth, the socio-economic conditions. So there is a British group who are basically actually an European group, and one of the former Director General of the European Commission is its chairman. They have been interacting with us, and they wanted my involvement with them, and I'm very much in favor of that. So this is that convergence system. The concept that I like is this. There is the contraction and convergence, and what happens is our per capita emission is low. So if you look at this diagram, 2000 we are here, per capita. USA is here. So it is actually per capita 25 times more. Good. And even the global one, global average is also higher than ours. So the concept is whether we can go back, go to a situation where their per capita goes on decreasing, and these countries like India, Brazil, China go on increasing, and at a certain point of time, that is what you have to decide. They become together. Now, political significance is that India will have to recognize the fact that in some areas, India is a major emitter, is not a low emitter. In carbon dioxide, it is a low emitter. Per capita carbon dioxide is only 1/25 of USA. But the point is, even if you do not have an upper limit, the way these emissions are growing, even from the developing countries, will no longer have space. If you want to control the total carbon dioxide equivalent by a certain period, say 2100, you want to keep it to a certain level. In order to control the temperature increase or precipitation increase, all the changes that we are talking about, you say that this is the limit beyond which you should not go for your well-being. In that limit, even if you control the developed countries, the carbon dioxide is not going to decay that quickly. It has 100 years lifetime. So the space that is available for growth for the developing countries is not very large. So they will have to control at some stage or other. So everywhere there are problems of this. And then question of adaptation. For somebody else's fault, the atmosphere is changing. You have a sea level rise problem, you have coral reef problem, you have a high temperature heat wave problem, you have rainstorm problem, you have cyclone problems. So we look at extreme climatic events. Here is an interesting one. This is life. You see, we call it, you see that here, a lucky escape for the ozone. This was where the ozone was earlier. It started decreasing because of human activities, CFCs. Now the Montreal Protocol is coming up now. So it is recovering. So one of the programs that was talked about was MAIRS. MAIRS is Monsoon Asia Integrated Regional Studies. And it covers the entire region. If you look in terms of the river systems or urban sprawl, which will cut through the entire Asian region in three parts: South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia. South Asia I am handling, and the first component of this program is to create a status report and find out where we go from here. Can we find the interacting relationship of socio-economic dimensions, how human activities have changed this with the physical drivers of Earth system, not merely climate, not merely the atmosphere, but oceans, forest, ecosystem, fragile ecosystems like Sundarbans. And in that, the first work is about 3/4 over. We intend to finish the write-up, in which the contributors come from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka. It has been suggested to look at simultaneously three major deltas in this region: the Gangetic Delta, the Mekong Delta, and the Yangtze River Delta. First step was you have to have uniform protocol for observations. You have to decide what kind of people are you going to examine. You have to decide what time of the year you have to do that. So we have settled that part of it. And now we are collecting the data and planning to decide on the time frame for actual operation in all the 5 countries. But for carbon monoxide, for ozone, for particulate, there is no protocol. Ozone, the protocol is, Montreal Protocol is for the upper atmosphere. Upper means stratosphere, about 25-30 kilometers. Nothing for the surface ozone. That's bad for health. That's for crops. That's bad for climate. But that's the one, there is no protocol, there is no recognition that it is bad. We are working on it. We just published a report recently. And carbon monoxide, the same problem. Carbon monoxide is one of the most obnoxious gases. Its health effect is not known. But we are looking at health effect of climate change in 3 ways now. One is the usual climate parameters: temperature, precipitation, humidity. What does it do for malaria? Malaria may go up in height. You might see in Darjeeling very soon the way it is warming up. But malaria also moves from one region to another. So to what are the transmission of malaria windows in the country? We have worked on that recently. We have published this. So that is one work. And we had our own methodologies. That has been done by us with the Malaria Research Center as partner. Second work we did in health was respiratory diseases with aerosols. What will aerosols do? It is the minor small particles that do it. So you have to measure then finer particles. So we mentioned that all the pollution control boards should measure PM 2.5 and below. So that some of them are doing that now. So that you see the respiratory diseases, particularly in winter, when they get trapped. You have a large incidence there. And affluent people, large incidence, because of the vehicle population there. So that's another one. We did that jointly with Petal Chess Institute. Third one we have started is the ultraviolet UVB work. Not on skin, that was originally the focus, but we are looking at the eye. And then a new program, apart from this mobile communication I mentioned, which I am now currently working on. And working on means, that is my present I will say the primary interest is what is called seismoelectromagnetics, earthquake system. You have been hearing about tsunami, earthquake. Can you predict it? Can you not predict it? One prediction is a system where you have GPS receivers, array of them. Professor Gaur has it in the fault line, and you see how the movement of the plate is accumulating. You measure them. But this is something else. This is it. You find radio waves, radio signals are in some frequencies are emitted during and even before the earthquake. It was accidentally seen during the Kobe earthquake by the Japanese. Professor Hayakawa, one of the university professors there, he saw that one, analyzed it. So they had some other instruments, so radio instruments. They found some signals there, which they then related to the Kobe system, and they wanted to see whether it's true or it is a fake signal. So they tried out with several other earthquakes in different parts of the world. This has come up as a new field called seismoelectromagnetics, because it is an electromagnetic radiation from that pressurized plate system. And in that, when we discussed it, we were trying to look at similar signals in the radio frequencies. I found that some 20 years back, some of our equipments have seen, we were looking at cyclone signals at that time, when the cyclone prediction was not that good. We got some earthquake signals also at that time, but in a totally different frequency range, not the ones that Professor Hayakawa's group are doing. The question is whether you have an advanced signal for an earthquake before the earthquake actually happens through electromagnetic system. And this workshop was international one, was to see examples of where such advanced signals have been observed through a variety of techniques that relate to earth currents, techniques that relate to leakage of gases, or climate forcing gases like carbon dioxide, water vapor. They heat up the atmosphere in the neighborhood. Techniques that relate to communication systems, where once you change this, refractivity you change, radio refractivity. Techniques that relate to upper atmosphere, ionosphere. So that was, I inaugurated that. The Russians are very keen on it, French are very keen on it, and new satellite has been launched on that system by the French. And there is an international conference in March, middle of March. So I've been asked to go there and also open that symposium. And I'm interested in that. If we can combine our early work with their work and see maybe most of the equipments we have, or we can easily mount. So it's the earthquake, there is no prediction system excepting, no real prediction system or tested prediction system, excepting something like that plate movement accumulation. You will look at the GPS system, and then you say, now this has reached such a high level, chances of an earthquake occurring is such and such. Like we do flare prediction, solar flare prediction we have been doing. We say if it is more than 90% confidence level that such a thing will happen tomorrow, then we give the prediction. That's immediately done. And that is not dependent on a minister or a senior man or a director general. So you don't have to sack a director general as they did in Thailand. It's done automatically. More than 90% level, it's automatically distributed. You know, that prediction, I should mention that, when we started it, the American data used to come to us in a motorcycle from the American embassy. There was no real communication system of that kind now. Now it comes through the satellite website system. So, accepting that, we do not have very many methods. The one we did earlier, we have to do that again. But the Hayakawa kind of frequencies that we see are easily measurable. So we want to use this technique to see how good is this new technique of seismoelectromagnetics. And so that's radio science again, but totally different field. But then as a follow-up, we are thinking of mounting a program, another workshop specifically related to the effect on the ionosphere, in which there is a lot of work here. We have a large experience in it, more than 50 years, and internationally also that is recognized to be one of the real good places for the world. So we'll have that and concentrate on only one element of it. But there is a global change aspect of radio field that nobody has worked on. I am getting into that now. You see, what will happen is, if you change the atmosphere, you are changing the communication system also. And the radar communication, troposcatter communication will change. That is one aspect. Another radio aspect that we are looking at, preliminary one at the moment, is on the health hazard of mobile communication. And Dr. Banerjee here and myself, Professor Bihari in Jawaharlal Nehru University, Jadavpur University in Calcutta, we planned some program together. It's at the initial stage. What is disaster management? Is it doing in the 0.5 position of the aircrafts? This is one of those. Calculation করেছেন Some of them I am in touch with. I'll tell about a couple of people who are very interesting people. One is Klabusha. He is in Boston. He is in fact in many of the program of global positioning satellite. The program called WAS in our country, it's called Gagan. There is a Gagan program where you are using again the ionosphere, same ionosphere, to get the position of an aircraft very accurately. And several hundred crores are being used in India alone for that particular one, but it's a global program. In that, Klabusha is the key person who has given the correction methodology and more. Now, Klabusha is a very close friend of mine. His wife is also very close. They come to India very frequently, number one. Number two, they're very fond of India. And I'll give one example of that. It's about 20 years back. They came here in this room Now that happened to be Saraswati Puja day, and I still on that day I fast, give Anjali, and then take food. So when she came, I said, I'm on the way to go to Patel Nagar. There is a puja there. I will go and then come back and then I will talk with you. And she said, no, I will come along with you. So she came along. She saw that we took off our shoes. She took off our shoes. She gave Anjali. So for her, that family is a very close friend even now. She had cancer, but she is recovering from cancer now. So every year, at the end of the year, he gives a long letter detailing all that he has done, his family has done for 1 year. Another person I will mention is Bill Gordon. He was the rector of Rice University earlier. He was a very major, one of the legendary figures in atmospheric science. I know him and his family for 30 years. Another giant in this field was Radcliffe. He was the director of the Cavendish Laboratory. Once I remember when I was on his invitation when I visited Cambridge University, I was impressed by the fact that you look at the building. The building is old and dilapidated at that time. It is now new. But here, that work in the Cavendish Laboratory, almost all major earth-shaking discoveries have taken place. So the building doesn't matter. So Radcliffe became a very close friend. So I met Radcliffe. A few other people like Henry Booker from England, Sidney Bohill, he came from England and joined the same laboratory, Pennsylvania, Goldberg, and so there are people of that kind. One is Karl Rauber, a German. He was a prisoner of war and very high-level atmospheric person. But he is best known now for the work he did on what is called the International Reference Ionosphere. That is, if you want to see what that ionosphere is doing, or can I predict it, what is it doing in communication system, what is it doing in the positioning of the aircrafts, or the delay it produces in certain other phenomena, timing system. Then Professor Bannon, Sir Granville Bannon, he died. I remember we were very close friends, and he wanted me to take over his job in the University of Wales, Aberystwyth, when he was retiring at the age, he was then 65, at the age of 65. So he invited me and my wife to his house there, and I didn't accept it at that time. So he then tried to persuade my wife, and he was also the main person, he was the leader of this area of work for entire Europe. That was the main reason why he wanted to do it. So eventually, since when I didn't take it, and then another friend of mine, Thomas, was taken there, Lance Thomas, in that position. But Bannon was very fond of roses. He has a beautiful garden. So anybody would come to his house, he will show the roses. His wife, Lady Bannon, was a very retiring kind of person. So she would avoid crowded streets because people would call her as Lady Bannon. She didn't want to do that. So they were Welsh and musical family. They were very superb musicians, particularly piano. His son, he's a mathematics wrangler. He is also a great pianist. So the entire family was music-minded, and a very interesting family. They have died, so I keep in touch with his wife. There is a Japanese Matsumoto, and then Fukao and Kato. These are atmospheric radars. They built it some time back. We are in touch with them even now. Hindi, not so much, not all of it, but Gurudatta kind of thing, yes. That kind of Pyasa kind of music I like. And my wife was a singer also, and she likes Ravindra music, but she is very fond of Hindi music also. English, to some extent, not that much. Classical English, yes.
When we were in America for little more than 2 years, my daughters were very small at that time. My elder daughter was 6.5 and the younger one was almost 3. They were going to school. So at that time he was telling them all sorts of imaginary stories, like imaginary ghosts or something like that, and they used to laugh like anything because they hadn't got anything, whether it is true or not, they didn't know, and they used to laugh like anything. So one day we went to a restaurant. There's a very dark restaurant, and they were going on laughing. Then one American came and patted his back, and he told, "Can you tell me one thing? How can you keep them so happy? I want to know the secret." He never allowed my daughters to stay away from home beyond 7:30. So that way he was also very anxious. Then when he came to know that she hasn't come and there was no message from her or anything, she not only was very angry, she was very worried. The first thing what he did, he took his car out and banged on the pillar in the director's bungalow NPL, and it fell down. Then he went to the gate, he banged with something else, and when my daughter came back, she had a very big banging from him. Sometimes he is angry with me also, but I am a great fighter, so I always argue. I don't believe what I don't believe, I don't take it from him. We are fighting all the time. And I think that is, even Bhola knows. In the car we fight. He knows Bengali, so he can follow it. He likes shukto. That is a little bitter things we use it, like what do you call karela, aloo. That is a typical Bengali thing, and many other things like Bengali dal or some ilish machir chal. He is a very good pakoda cook. He cooks pakoda very nicely. Nowadays he is not trying many, but he is really good in that. I don't know how come he has made it, because he likes to eat pakodas and all.
Sometimes I go out, what I do when I walk. Walking is only incidental. So I will take the second cup of tea with me, with newspaper, go there, walk and put this tea and the newspaper in the car there, a personal car, and then walk around, come back to the car, read a little bit more newspaper, take more tea, then go around a bit, go on like this. My father was a school teacher, mathematics, but the kind of teacher I had at that time, so they impressed me even now I remember. Geography teacher, just taking a globe and then putting a candle, lights off, and then tell you about how solar eclipse will occur, lunar eclipse will occur, how day and night changes and everything else. I still remember that. Then my father was the mathematics teacher. So mathematics I learned from him. English was from the headmaster. There were many people in this school that we still recall because the grounding was very good. Their pay was very low, but they were very dedicated. My father came there just before the examination to check how was my mathematics. From Calcutta he came there. And I remember continuously for maybe 16 or 18 hours, he gave me one sum after another, one sum after another. So many hundreds of ones that I had to do. And then he says, all right, he was satisfied with it. So that I remember. At that age, my wife will tell you, she could see with only one eye. And she would watch and see and saw from a distance the quarters we had at that time. There is a cobra coming in there. So my mother shouted, you are coming in my car. He said, don't get out there. There is a cobra there. So she can watch all this. And she would read all the time. She would read anything. That is a habit we got from my father and my mother. It didn't matter what. And whatever book you have in front of you, read. This is called Town School. It is more than 100 years old incidentally. In fact, the 100th year was celebrated a few years back. I was the president of that. So it is in the north part of Calcutta, Sambhajar area, Town School. And my father was a mathematics teacher in the same school. You know, Shankar Sen was the Minister of Power in West Bengal. His father, we were classmates. His father used to teach me in his house there. Ladli Mohan would teach me chemistry in his house. Botany professor would teach there. Bengali Jagadish Bhattacharya. They were superb teachers. That is, you will be, when you listen to their lectures, you will be intoxicated. You will not think about anything else. I remember at that time the teachers in Bangladeshi College where I studied intermediate, and there the chemistry teacher, A.P.Mitra, famous teacher, and so he will suddenly have an examination, and then he will not start the class before I arrived. Sometimes I was a little late because I walked all through. Then I wanted to go to physics because of A.P.Mitra, Meghnad Shah, S.N. Bose. But first I thought I would go for applied physics. So it changed there. But it was more an idea of going into some area of science. Never something else, never in a commercial area or business area. We never had that. That time in the Calcutta culture was also science-based. I had many other interests at that time. One interest was Bengali literature, and another was music. Even now it is music. I work at home with music in the background, and my children do that also. Well, not very studious, but I talked all the time. I stood first, and then the whole. At that time, Bengal, Bihar, Odisha were together. So I was topper of the whole matriculation examination. Before independence, when I was in the Presidential College, I remember the principal was Professor P.C. Mahalanobis, that famous statistician. And I remember once during some kind of, not riot, because there were British soldiers who were patrolling on the streets, and some student probably threw some stones at them. So they tried to enter the President's College. Mahalanobis stopped the gate, didn't allow them. Well, not dislike, but I ignored him. There was somebody in the master's degree, and we came to a disagreement. So I didn't listen to his lectures at all. I stayed in the class, didn't listen. But that's where I got 99 out of 100, that paper. See, when I was asked to take over as the Director General of CSIR, I was then, in fact, there was a very famous man, Professor Lagas, at that time was here, and I was talking with him. Then they wanted me to take over immediately, so I had asked for time, 15 days or so. But then coming back, that when I was asked to take the Director Generalship, I made a condition. I said, look, I don't want to quit from science now. Then the comment was, Prime Minister's comment, Rajiv Gandhi's comment was, who asked you to quit it? So you tell me what you want to do. Then I said, one day a week, I want free. And I will go to the laboratory and nobody should interfere with me. So that was done, that is given. So I used to do that. And in the CSIR, I never took any papers at home, file papers, excepting scientific papers. When I was director of this laboratory, I was only the morning, before lunch, I'll be in the director's room. Then otherwise I'll come here in the afternoon. I was never disrupted here. So it is possible, provided you delegate and trust people. If you delegate, give it to the individual groups. When I was Director General CSIR, individual laboratories, director here, individual group leaders. It's not much. I think it can be done. It is possible in India, and only in India, at that level, the minister and the prime minister would allow you to be there like this. So India has several qualities that you will not find elsewhere. I don't think in the USA or Europe they will allow you that. They will say that you have taken this job, you might as well do that properly. So that is their idea of properliness. Well, there are always some amount of disagreements. It is not always plain sailing. And the recent disagreement was in that methane emission from the paddy field. And there was a lot of disagreement of people, but we knew there would be disagreement. And therefore we planned it in such a way. There were our standard samples with which we made the measurements were calibrated in advance with other countries. So there are disagreements, but on the whole, in the ionospheric radio science field, we didn't have any major disagreement. Minor ones. In science, we don't do that. In science, personal dispute doesn't come up. You can be very close friends, but disagree on the system. In fact, my principle was, when I was director of this laboratory, is when we judge a person for his scientific capability, we forget about his personal idiosyncrasies. Bureaucracy always helped me. I always think back and find out how is it that I never had any problem of that kind. I'll give you some examples of how bureaucracy helped us rather than hindered us. The IGY period, International Geophysical Year, 50 years back. I was a young man at that time. I was running the program. And there were problems, some unexpected problems came up at some time. And that the ionospheric data came from Taiwan. Taiwan at that time, according to our rules, any material coming from Taiwan would be confiscated by customs and burnt. So they were confiscated by customs and burnt, and a postcard came to me saying that under rule such and such, this has been burnt. So I wrote to Finance Secretary saying that you cannot do it because these are ionospheric data. We are part of the International Geophysical Year. All data can be distributed all over the world. So change this rule. They changed it. So there was bureaucracy, but they changed it. And another time, I remember one American coming from geodesy experiment, gravimetry, and he was stopped in Hawaii because he didn't realize that he needs a visa for India. At that time, those days, the American scientists were not knowledgeable about the visa restrictions. So I got a call from him, distress call, that how do I come? I called up the External Affairs Ministry. They immediately gave them the visa. Whenever we wanted that, we had got it. There were enormous support for us. So bureaucracy didn't work. I will give you a more recent example. Antarctic, the first Antarctic expedition. Look at the way the bureaucracy behaved. This laboratory's bureaucracy at that time. This was in 1979 or 80, or around that time, the first one, when Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister. I was involved in the planning of it, but it was confidential at that time. The director of that laboratory didn't know. I was not the director, but I was involved. So I chose a person from here, a young person. I was asked to choose somebody. I chose one person, unmarried, young, and then told him that you get your family's permission on it. So he came and said he will do. Then I was told that he will have to go for training for exposure to very low temperatures, so in the Himalayan region. He will have to go by air frequently. Now he was a young man and junior level. He didn't have, we could not permit him under the Government of India rules. He will go by train, he cannot go by air. But I sent a note to our administration without giving any cause. I said, so and so, for the next couple of years, will fly by air at different places. You give him the money for that. They never asked a question. That was done. Later on, when the Antarctic expedition came successful, I asked them that I had thought that you might oppose it. He says, no, we realize there is something behind it. He will let us know later on. So if there is a trust, they will go along with you. I think because of the uncertainty at that time, because we didn't know very much, that policy was set by the government. I have nothing to talk about there, but I do remember that after it succeeded, the first formal announcement was made by Mrs. Indira Gandhi at the Science Congress, Indian Science Congress. And I think it was just, it might not succeed, it might fail. They didn't want to talk about it at that time, if it failed. You have to define physics properly, but then science goes through many changes. So when you go to levels of very small dimension, then physics can help, and molecular biology is coming in that. So it has to merge from one field to another. The barrier has to go, but it's not physics alone. But you know that even in physics, people used to compartmentalize it into electricity, magnetism, electronics, optics, sound. But one man, Nobel laureate, who had these famous lectures is Feynman. Feynman's lectures were 3 volumes in which he discarded these distinctions. So from fundamental principles he went into all of it. So I introduced the Young Scientist Award also in the CSIR, and that still continues. And some of them are Bhatnagar awardees now. And again, connected with this research and technology both, I asked the young scientists after the award ceremony, what is it they want from the CSIR? You know what they asked for? One was a simple system of importing equipments, because equipments were, even though you have a license, research equipments are not stopped, but then often there was a delay. Second component was power structure. The voltage fluctuates, frequency changes. He said right on the spot, the first one, import one, I will do it. I give you a promise, I will find a solution. Second one, I don't think I can do anything about it now. The first one, immediately after that he asked me, they'll give me a note what you can do. It was done. So a passbook system was introduced by him. We have a Krishnan Memorial Lecture, first director Krishnan, in his name. He came to give that lecture at my invitation. So I thought that he will speak on Josephson effect. Did I tell you that? And he said, if you do not mind, I will talk on something else. Josephson effect was the Nobel Prize winning work. What that something else was? Is the science of yoga. He gave on science of yoga. Then he asked me, he came to my house for dinner. Then he asked me, where can I see real yogis? Because I want to see from there, from the way they practice it, whether my idea of science is in conflict with that or they are in consonance. So I told him I can't find anybody in Delhi. You have to go to Haridwar, places in Rishikesh kind of. We sent him around. Amongst these people, the one I remember, many of these important people, was the Russian Nobel laureate. I remember Krishnan was alive at that time. In this corridor, I had moved into this room at that time. So I was with him, with Krishnan. So somewhere, some comment was made about such and such a program we are doing. And he said, I have an advice for you. Don't kill a mosquito with a gun. don't take up little things. Just because from these little things you get some money out of it. I remember another one. These are in my area, Bachner. Bachner was at that time probably ran American Science. And we had in my group at that time there were 8 or 10 people. Bachner was charmed with that group. He said it's high quality, world class, etc. But don't go beyond the number of 20. Then you start losing excellence. But we did go beyond 20. That was his advice. It's a very good one. And you know, one of the comments that I always cherish about my group, that at that time it was a little group. I had just come there in a little group. It was early 60s, I think. There is, what is it, what is it, that Britisher, Blackett's report. There was a half a page report. It was a book of the review of the NPL. At the end side, there is a half a page. I don't know if you have seen it. His first comment was, at that time we didn't have what they used to call officers at that time, except myself. The others were all assistants, a few. So his first line was, this unit is first rate, give Mitra whatever he wants. That was the kind of statement. We got people money, but the question is, don't go too fast. Quality will suffer. We got a cable, and that cable came in the CSIR headquarters. I was expecting it on that day, so it came about 1 o'clock or so. Then I think our administration head was Umesh Saigal, who became the chief secretary later on. He sent a message to the Prime Minister to that, and then when I come home, I was then with the Director General's bungalow, and there were newspaper people already there.
First of all, I came to know the news when I was in school. I was working in Balmarati Public School, and I got the news from there. So I came home and found a lot of TV people surrounding our bungalow, and I was very happy, of course, but immediately I couldn't arrange anything like that. And then we called our friends next day and several other days, and there was a celebration side by side from the government side also, like INSA, and we went to London also. No, he was not very excited. On the other hand, I was very excited. He knew that he could have got it easily.
My wife and I were the guests of the Royal Society for 2 weeks, moved around to different places, gave lectures, met people. We went to Leicester, we went to Wales, we went to Oxford, we went to Cambridge. The Foreign Secretary was from Oxford, so he invited us for a lunch there. Not really connected with the Royal Society matter, but I remember something that's very curious. On the way to Oxford, the car was provided by the Royal Society, but then the embassy changed that, and the embassy provided the car. And there was a man who was hired by the embassy, who normally doesn't do that. He has retired, but for special guests he drives the car. Then on the way to Oxford, suddenly he went off the main road and was going through the farmland to some place. We were wondering what he was getting off. So he said, is this the way to Oxford? He said, just wait. They took us to, there was a Ramakrishna mission, special mission there in that place. He took us there. He said, I thought we would like to be very peaceful, very quiet. Almost everybody there were foreigners. They were probably all British. The people who were praying there were British ladies, British men. The Swamiji, who was in the garden, looking after the garden, was a British disciple. And so that the event I still remember.
In fact, when he is doing some scientific job which is really meaningful, then he is very happy. I find him as a very cooperative and helping husband, because I had a fascination for dance and music, and I was a dancer and singer before my marriage, and I could continue that. In fact, if you tell me, he becomes irritated now because he is getting old, as well as too much works he is taking. So sometimes, if there is small things, he cannot take it. Like I ask him some shopping or something, he doesn't like all those things. But he doesn't mind if I go for shopping or buy many things. He may not know what is going on in our household. He doesn't know any price of any vegetable or fruit or fish or meat. So that's why I was very surprised. Yesterday, one of his colleagues, you have met him, maybe A.P.Mitra. I met him in Chittaranjan Park. I went to buy some fish and all those things. So he told me, where is Dr. Mitra? I told you expect him with me, fish market. So there is that. Then he becomes irritated. And a few things he doesn't like at all. Like if somebody is not punctual, he doesn't like it at all. Everybody has to be very punctual, especially me, if not even 5 minutes late. Then he becomes very irritated. And another thing, a lot of noise is going on at home. Because first of all, he is working for science. Secondly, always we stayed in big bungalows. So sometimes, you can hear somebody is talking, or I am talking to the maid. He doesn't like that sort of things. Then he becomes irritated. Otherwise, he is very peaceful. If you allow him to work peacefully, he is very good.
I think it saddens me when somebody can do a job but he or she is not doing it. So that always happens. Many people around, because they are far better than what they perform. Our expectation is that what that person thinks he or she can do, actually they can do much better. But I'm saddened when I find that they are doing much less. So that will be either neglect or lack of commitment or apathy. I don't remember. I think it was some time back. Oh yes. I saw again in the plane from Osaka to San Francisco. Shall We Dance? A new movie. I don't know if you have seen it. Richard Gere. Beautiful movie with beautiful dancing. I like dancing, and my wife likes his dancing.
So he was always supporting us, like supplying music and playing music for us while we are rehearsing or doing something, and maybe sparing his driver to take musicians here and there. He himself is not a musician, but he likes music and dance very much.
About Satyajit Ray's, and for example, one of my favorite is Agantuk. Apu trilogy, yes, but then Agantuk I have seen several times. Harano Show. It is really a Bengali version of Random Harvest. But I think one of the movies that I liked was Lagan. I liked. Another one is, I've forgotten the name, where the part of it was in India, part in UK. Should remember that. There was another Indian movie called River, many years back, and superb music. And I was in Penn State at that time.
He was very close to Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, and they were almost like very close friends, though they hadn't got any much difference. He was very respectful to him, and you will be amazed to hear that very often I used to see Rajiv Gandhi is passing a yellow sheet to him. Somebody is sitting in between maybe, and after that when I saw that sheet, it was written, "Mitraji, the lecture is very boring. Can you make it short, or can you make that man sit down?" So that was really good.
That is, you have to decide what you want to do in your life. If you want to be a scientist, then you'll have to do that really full time, almost 24 hours. So even if you are at home, you think about it. So there is no particular time that you think. It is almost like a singer or a musician. It has to be a passion. You do it because you like to do it. When I work, I don't get tired. It's not work for me. So I remember once somebody asked me, when did I take leave? I don't remember taking leave in the last 20 years. Doing in positioning on the aircraft's position, or when they use some sort of timing system. What is it called? Yeah, talking to you,